Anyhow, the advertisement that we're talking about showed two posters that were displayed side by side on billboards and online earlier this year. The first one showed a cartoon image of a man's naked bottom with the text, "First timers enter here." And the second poster said, "Ins and outs, sex education for gay and bi guys, insandouts.org.nz." And the I in the word ins was drawn in the shape of a penis. I know, Monday morning. And the O in the word outs was drawn to look like an anus. Oh, for God's sake. Now, the Burnett Foundation, formerly the New Zealand AIDS Foundation, funded the posters to raise awareness about gay and bisexual education. However, they've quickly garnered hundreds, certainly scores, potentially hundreds of complaints, as I understand, to the Advertising Standards Authority. And the fact that they are on dairies and available for small children to see, and obviously would be unsurprising in that respect, that there would be some outrage and concern about that. The Burnett Foundation is all over the news. It was all over months ago, says Rachel. Yes, but it's in the dairy now, can I say. So it's still, although there were complaints about that particular advertisement that go back to February, but the complaints might have been put out in February to do with that ad. They are still being displayed in dairies today. Joining us to talk about it is Chief Executive Family First New Zealand, Bob McCoskrie. Bob, welcome to the show.
Morning, Michael.
Now, as I understand, the Burnett Foundation was set up, I think it was called formerly the New Zealand AIDS Foundation, and most of it was to do with AIDS, as I understand. They moved on from that, and now they are running sort of safe sex programs. I think they're supported by the Department of Health or Te Whātua Ora, anyhow, as part of their funding. But what's in particular got you going over this issue? Because this issue was meant to be over. Is it the fact that they're still advertising despite there was a controversy over this at the start of the year?
Look, there was controversy at the beginning of the year, but those were slightly different posters, my understanding of that particular issue. These were posters that were not only outside dairies, but they were also in Durham Lane. They were down in Wellington, in Eastbourne. And so they were posters, one that said the ins and outs, sex education for gay and bi guys. The I in ins was a penis. The O in outs was a rectum. Yeah. There was also another poster that said, with the picture of a backside, and it said, "First timers enter here." This is outside a dairy in Birkdale. There was a poster also by Wiggles poster. So the Burnett Foundation tried to defend themselves by saying, "Look, we targeted where we put these ads." But as far as we were concerned, and what families were concerned about, is that if there's a Wiggles poster there, or it's a dairy where families are going in to get the basic stock for the day, the last thing they want to do is to see a advertisement talking about anal sex. One of the other ads was also about tops and bottoms, and everywhere in between was a poster. And there was another one who said how to slide into more than his DMs, his direct messages. And you can imagine the image. So, look, it was as I said to the New Zealand Herald reporter that rang, if they've got a targeted audience, even if we disagree with it, I still believe what Dr. Miriam Grossman said when she came and spoke at our conference, that is the simple biological reality that the anus is an exit, not an entrance. But even if you...
Oh, you'd have to tell that to a large number of heterosexuals as well, to be quite perfectly honest with you.
Well, that's exactly it, and that's what I found quite ironic about the heading in the New Zealand Herald was it says Burnett Foundation told to remove gay sex education ads. Actually, no, it's got nothing to do with gay sex education. It's got to do with explicit sexual contents in a public place where there's children. And also the big question is whether the Burnett Foundation is actually telling the truth. I mean, if you really want to feel grubby for the rest of today, go to the Burnett Foundation website and have a look at some web sites on their page about your guide to anal douching and what is scat. you'll definitely need a shower after reading that page. And by the way, just to really add some spice to this discussion, Michael, one of the key people involved with the Burnett Foundation is none other than Benjamin Doyle, the new Green MP.
No, it doesn't surprise me. No, the thing is, and you're absolutely right, it's not about whether it's gay or heterosexual. It's about the fact that it's sexually explicit and in a ribald and, you might argue, offensive way, certainly when you're talking about the number of people who can have access to watch it. Now, my understanding is that the complaints went to the Advertising Standards of Complaints Authority and they upheld the complainants and said, you will take this down. We tried to get the Burnett Foundation on the show this morning. They said they had nobody available despite having about 50 employees, which I found slightly disingenuous.
No.
Yeah.
They never front up.
And they never, no, exactly, they never front up, not even to the New Zealand Herald. I'm interested in the fact that the Burnett Foundation, is it time to withdraw their funding? Because they just simply don't seem to get it.
Well, I don't think that their original purpose of preventing AIDS is now their focus. I think they've gone well beyond that, and they're basically promoting what many would say is a sexually explicit hedonistic lifestyle. If people want that, they can fund that themselves, but why should the taxpayer have to fund pages that talk about anal douching and scat? I mean, that's just out of the ambit of most taxpayers.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. It's out of the ambit of most of us. Listen, so where are we now with that? The Advertising Standards Complaints Authority said no, it's offensive for, not because it's gay, but because it's just so sexually explicit and so easily available to people who are normal. The other thing, though, is what the second wave of advertisements, which you say are slightly different. What happens now? I mean, why would dairy put them up in the first place, though? Or were they just attached without the dairy knowing? You'd think not, wouldn't you?
No. Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing, because when we first highlighted the dairy, when people contacted us about this dairy that had them, we just said to the locals, look, go to the dairy, speak to the manager, ask them if they know exactly what they've got on the wall. Next minute, a couple of hours later, there was kind of big bits of A3 plastered over it, and then eventually the advertisement was taken down. And that's how we always think that's the best way to approach these issues, is to get locals to speak to the businesses involved and just plead to their sense of goodwill and concern for young people. Now, look, there was definitely some earlier posters in February. There was a Advertising Standards Authority decision in February that upheld that certain placement in certain areas was unacceptable. But this latest decision came out last month, and it was specifically related to these ones that we're talking about now. So you should not see any of those in public. The Advertising Standards Authority has held that those are unacceptable. And unfortunately, Michael, not by unanimously. The ASA was actually split, so it was a majority decision. So there's some people on the ASA who think that the ads were quite all right, and that should concern us all.
Well, actually, to be perfectly honest with you, it's been a liberal institution for a long time. I'm surprised they came up with that judgment. Listen, just on that, I'm interested in, and I don't know if you're aware that Matt Ducey is, as you know, the new Minister of Mental Health. Yeah. Now, it's an odd appointment for me, the Minister for Youth and Mental Health, because, as I understand, he worked at Tavistock in the UK. And Tavistock was discredited, has been widely discredited for their mistreatment of young children and young people, and the treatment of giving them, body-altering drugs and trying to turn them from boys into girls and vice versa. Should somebody who works at Tavistock and who obviously believes that everything that they did there was okay, be in charge of, or the Minister for Youth and Mental Health in New Zealand, in your view, Bob?
Well, there's a lot of questions to ask about Matt Ducey. I think he raised some eyebrows when he did his maiden speech, and he talked, it was during the conversion therapy debate, and he talked about the fact that he had young children and he was looking forward to the day when they would discover their own sexuality and their own gender. And that immediately made people think, wow, okay, he's right into this gender ideology. That's a bit of a concern. He's then put in charge of the mental health portfolio, and to be honest, he's not fronting up on this whole debate. The whole area, I mean, he has not made public comment as far as I can find on the CAS review. We've had to do OIAs to try and find out who's been contacting him, but he's not making any public statements as to whether the government is moving towards stopping the transing of children in terms of chemicalisation, the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones. And, you know, now you've got Trump, who made a very clear policy in February of 2023, which I don't know if you've seen, is doing the rounds on social media at the moment, where he makes quite clear that they'll move to a counselling approach rather than a chemicalising approach on this whole issue, which everybody is excited about. And look,
just common sense, I would have thought.